The distant whistle of the last train had long since faded into the hills, but the woman remained motionless on the wooden platform. Everyone else had drifted away to their homes and waiting families, leaving her utterly alone beneath the dim station light. She possessed no family to greet her, no money for another fare, no lodging for the night, only a worn suitcase at her feet and a letter that had crushed whatever hope she had managed to carry westward. She breathed the words into the cooling air, barely a whisper. "There is nowhere left for me to go." Just then, a small girl walking beside her father stopped and stared, noticing the tears streaming silently down the woman's face. She tugged at her father's sleeve and asked with that blunt honesty only children possess, "Daddy, why does that lady look like she's waiting for someone who is never coming back?" The rancher paused and looked across the platform, and instead of continuing on his way, he turned and walked directly toward her. What that little girl said next would offer the lonely woman something she had not experienced in years, a genuine sense of belonging. Stay with me until the very end, because this is not simply a tale about finding a new home. It is about discovering that sometimes the family you are meant to have finds you when you have completely stopped searching. If you enjoy emotional Wild West stories filled with kindness, hope, and second chances, please give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and join us for more unforgettable tales. The final whistle of the evening train echoed across Willow Creek Station as black smoke curled into the orange and purple sky. Travelers hurried toward their wagons, porters carried trunks across the creaking wooden planks, and families disappeared down the dusty main road toward cozy homes where warm meals and familiar faces eagerly awaited them. Yet one woman remained exactly where she had been standing for nearly an hour, unmoved by the commotion around her. Her name was Anna Miller, and beside her rested a battered brown suitcase with a broken latch that refused to stay closed. Inside that suitcase were two simple dresses, a well-worn Bible, and a bundle of letters tied together with faded blue thread. Everything else she had ever owned was gone, lost to circumstances beyond her control. She had arrived in Willow Creek believing she was traveling toward a fresh start, a new life filled with promise. A distant cousin had written to her offering work at a boarding house, steady wages, and a small room of her own. She had sold nearly all her possessions to afford the long journey west. But upon arrival, she learned the boarding house had closed its doors months earlier. Her cousin had moved away without leaving a forwarding address, and the only address she carried led to an empty, decaying building. Anna had spent the entire afternoon walking from shop to shop, pleading for help. Shopkeepers shook their heads apologetically. The innkeeper demanded payment she could not provide, and even the station master offered nothing more than the painful suggestion that she should take the next train back east. But going east was impossible. There was nothing left for her there. She had already lost both her parents, her fiancé, and the small farm that had once belonged to her family. The land had been seized after her father's crushing debts overwhelmed them, and the man she had planned to marry had coldly broken their engagement upon learning there would be no inheritance. One disappointment had followed another, each one chipping away at her spirit, until Anna had stopped expecting any kindness from anyone. Finally, she sank onto the edge of a wooden bench and stared blankly at the empty tracks stretching into the horizon. A folded letter rested in her lap, the paper so soft and creased from countless readings that it was nearly torn along the folds. It contained only a few cold, dismissive sentences telling her that the family who had once promised to help her could not afford the trouble of taking her in. Anna pressed the letter against her chest, closed her eyes, and whispered to herself, "I honestly do not know what I am supposed to do now." A few yards away, rancher Thomas Reed was preparing to leave the station with his 8-year-old daughter Lily. Thomas had been a widower for nearly 4 years, and since his wife's passing, his entire existence had revolved around raising his beloved little girl. Lily was a cheerful, endlessly curious child, far too observant for her age, always noticing the small details that adults tended to overlook. As they walked toward their wagon, she suddenly stopped in her tracks. Thomas turned around, a puzzled look on his face. "What is it, sweetheart?" Lily pointed directly toward Anna. "Daddy, look." Thomas followed her gaze and saw the lonely woman sitting beneath the station lamp, desperately trying to hide her tears from everyone passing by. "She looks so sad," Lily whispered softly. "Maybe she needs someone to help her." Thomas glanced toward the fading sky, knowing they had a long ride ahead and darkness would soon blanket the road. He also knew that helping strangers in frontier towns could sometimes bring unexpected complications he did not fully understand. Yet Lily continued watching Anna with concern in her young eyes. Finally, with a heavy sigh, Thomas walked over to the bench. He removed his hat respectfully before speaking. "Ma'am, are you waiting for another train to arrive?" Anna looked up at him and slowly shook her head. "No." Her voice was so faint it was nearly lost in the evening breeze. "Then are you waiting for someone to meet you?" Anna turned her gaze toward the empty road and replied quietly, "I was." Thomas did not press her further. He simply noticed the worn condition of her suitcase and the thin, frayed coat she wore against the cooling air. Before he could say another word, Lily stepped forward with a warm, open smile. "Would you like to come home with us for supper?" Anna stared at the little girl in complete surprise. No one had spoken to her with such genuine warmth throughout the entire day. I do not want to be a burden to anyone," she whispered hesitantly. Lily frowned as though the very idea were utterly strange and unreasonable. "You cannot be a burden just because you are hungry." Thomas looked at his daughter, then back at Anna. Something about the simple, innocent wisdom of those words touched him deeply. He extended his hand toward her. "My daughter has already made the invitation," he said gently. "I would be honored if you would accept it." Anna hesitated for a long, uncertain moment before finally placing her hand in his. She had no idea where the wagon would take her. She did not know what Thomas expected from her. She only knew that for the first time that day, someone had looked at her as though she truly mattered. As the three of them left the station beneath the fading sunset, Anna had no inkling that the road ahead would lead to far more than just one warm meal. It would guide her toward a life she had long ago stopped believing was even possible. Thomas's ranch was quiet and peaceful when they arrived, but Lily immediately filled the silence with lively chatter. She eagerly showed Anna the flower garden, the clucking chickens in their coop, and the small, cozy room where she insisted Anna could stay. During supper, Anna tried to eat slowly, afraid that accepting too much kindness would make her a burden. Lily noticed her hesitation and pushed the bread basket closer to her. "You do not have to earn dinner here," she said simply. Thomas smiled warmly, realizing his daughter had already decided in her heart that Anna belonged with them. Over the following days, Anna helped around the ranch, mending clothes, cooking meals, and caring for the animals. Thomas never pressured her to talk about her painful past. But one afternoon, the truth came to light when a man from town arrived with a troubling warning. Anna's former fiancé was searching for her, claiming she had stolen money from his family. Thomas refused to send her away based solely on an accusation. Instead, he made her a firm promise. "You will not face this alone." Anna finally began to understand that the ranch was becoming more than just shelter. It was becoming the first place in years where she truly felt safe and valued. The accusation against Anna was eventually exposed when the station clerk produced official records proving that her former fiancé had actually taken the money himself and had blamed her to avoid prison. Thomas stood firmly beside Anna as the truth was revealed, while Lily proudly held Anna's hand throughout the ordeal. Afterward, Anna told Thomas she could leave now that her name was cleared. Thomas gently shook his head. "You do not have to leave just because the trouble is over." He looked toward Lily, who smiled and whispered, "We already saved you a place." A month later, Anna had become part of the ranch without ever being asked to prove she belonged. She taught Lily to read, helped Thomas manage the farmhouse, and brought a warmth back to a home that had been quiet and lonely for far too many years. She had arrived at the station believing she had reached the bitter end of her story. Instead, she discovered that sometimes losing everything is not the final chapter. It is the moment when life finally makes room for something better. The moral of this story is simple. Never underestimate the power of one kind invitation. A person who feels forgotten may only need one open door to remember their own worth. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and visit us for more emotional Wild West stories about kindness, courage, and second chances.